The following video was sponsored by the Greek-American Heritage Society of Philadelphia, preserving and promoting our community's history.
Each day, famed department store owner John Wanamaker would walk into this Greek-owned store to put on a fresh boutonniere. It was a different time when men dressed to impress. 3 generations later, that same store, Polites Florists, once located at 1418 Chestnut Street, is part of the fabric and history of the Greek-American community of Philadelphia. It all started in 1908 when Greek immigrant Vangelis Polites launched his American dream. And when businesses moved west into the expanding suburbs, so did Polites Florists. In 1915, they were the 3rd business to open at the 69th Street Terminal, the gateway to the western suburbs of Philadelphia. Today, we talk with the 3rd generation owner, his grandson, Chris Polites, that continues the tradition. Chris, welcome to Cosmos Philly. Thanks for having us out today to your store.
You're welcome, and thank you for inviting me, and I appreciate the time.
Tell me a little bit about that particular boutonniere, the time, your grandfather. What was exactly happening there in that store?
Well, as you know, my grandfather opened up a store right at 1618 Chestnut Street, and it was across the street from John Wanamaker's department store. Mr. Wanamaker would go to work with a white carnation boutonniere on his lapel, and that was apparently the thing to do at the time. It was the of the ages, and so my grandfather Frank would pin that on his lapel, and he got to know Mr. Wanamaker by first name.
Let's talk a little bit about your grandfather's journey coming to America. Landing, establishing himself. I think you said first it was Chicago?
That is correct. My grandfather was born in a town right above Sparta in Cincinnati, and he was born in 1873. In 1887, he migrated through Chambord, France to Ellis Island and landed in Chicago. From Chicago, he journeyed to Philadelphia. And in Philadelphia, that's when he began his flower shops.
Tell us a little bit about the shop, where it was located again. We got the address, but what was it like for him there in Philadelphia? Was it hard establishing that business? And then tell us a little bit about the transition into the suburbs.
He raised his family of 4 in Millbourne. So as all immigrants, and it's a true immigrant story, there was a Greek ghetto, so to speak, in the area, and they all stuck together. They all went to St. George Church, and they all borrowed money from each other to establish themselves. And that is the story I got from my grandmother, because my grandfather actually died 10 years before I was born, unfortunately. But that's the story I got from my grandmother, and that's how they started.
So when the Greeks and the entire business community started to expand into the suburbs at the turn of the century, so went the store. First to the 69th Street Terminal, I think, 1915. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. The terminal opened up, and everything that keeps moving west, even today seems to be everybody moves west. So that was the gateway there. I think McClatchy opened up a shopping center, first one in the United States, in 69th Street. And the terminal opened up shortly thereafter. And he opened up a little kiosk there, a little store in the 69th Street Terminal.
So who was working in the store at that time? Would we say your dad was born and he was working in the shop at that time also?
Yes, at the time my grandfather had 4 children. He had Dean, Constantine, Lee, his brother, my father's brother, Marika, and Sophia. My uncle Lee and my father would work that store.
And tell us a little bit about the store's expansion then, because from the terminal, it goes right on to Garrett Road. Can you tell us about the time frame?
Yes, then they once they established themselves a little bit in the terminal, they decided to open up a shop. They rented a store next to the, at the time it was called First Pennsylvania Bank at 12 Garrett Road. They were there approximately, they opened up in the 30s and were there all the way up maybe 30, 40 years until the 70s. And from there, they bought a building on 42 Garrett Road, where we are today, presently.
Tell me a little bit about your family then, your father, the expansion of the store, and you coming in.
Okay. At the time, my father and uncle were partners. They had the store there in Upper Darby, 69th Street area, 42 Garrett Road. They had a store also, a branch store, again, branching out further west in Drexel Hill. And my father at the time, I had just graduated college. I had studied business admin. My father said, you know, you want to go into business? I have a business here. Why don't you give it a shot? I told him I would. I say I'd give it 2 years. And if I liked it, I'll stick with it. Even though I grew up in the business, my father didn't force me to work the business. He allowed me to go and expand and try other venues. And I worked all sorts of different places. As a matter of fact, before the last job I had is, while I was in college, was a chef's apprentice. So it was a big change.
How about success? You went from one store to 2 stores. Were there more stores? What happened there?
Yeah, as soon as my father and I became partners, and he was a great partner. He was a great mentor, a great teacher. He showed me a lot about the business and the dealings, and business is all about relationships and people. And he was very, very strong in the Greek community.
You stole my thunder there. I was going to ask you, what was the relationship with the Greek community? Because I think that was where that's where you solidified a great reputation.
We had a great reputation. He had a great reputation with the township because we were one of the first immigrant Greek families in the township. And my father, of course, he graduated here. He was born in the United States and he spoke English. I'll tell you a little story. Back in the late 60s, there were a lot of new Greek immigrants coming to Upper Darby. This one particular person somewhere on Powell Lane, I believe, had purchased a lamb and had a lamb in their yard. And all the neighbors got to know the lamb and were petting the lamb, and they thought it was kind of a cute little pet. Until that particular Greek person, come Greek Easter, well, you know the rest of the story.
What Greeks do, right?
What Greeks do, and the people were horrified. The man didn't speak a stitch of English. The police didn't know what to do, so they came to my father's flower shop, got my father as an interpreter to find out what's going on and why this man just slaughtered this lamb. And my father was able to resolve everything, and the family had a nice lamb dinner, except they kind of like kept it. Instead of keeping it way out in the yard for all the kids to see, he put it back in his kitchen in the house.
Let's talk about your family in terms of moving into the suburbs and your relationship with the Greek community. You became members of St. Luke's Greek Orthodox Church, where you're still active today.
That's correct.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, I was a member of the church. My family actually joined the church back in the, I guess they moved down in the 60s to Broomall. Prior to that, we remember St. Demetrius. I think that was on 56th Street or somewhere in West Philadelphia. And I grew up in the church. I got married in the church. My wife, Kathy, I married Kathy Karabetsis. She's a member of the church. We help the Greek festivals every year. As a matter of fact, when I was younger, I spent 2 years on the church council there at St. Luke's. And we enjoyed the priests and the camaraderie and the social atmosphere of the Greeks. As a matter of fact, to stay active in the Greek community, when I was back in 1975, a fellow named Nikos Metalinos, he was from Canada, I think the University of Toronto. He was hired for a communications director at Temple University. At the same time, there was a bicentennial celebration in Philadelphia, a big major celebration. All the ethnic groups wanted to be represented, and the city thought it'd be a nice idea to have each ethnic group represented by a dance troupe. Well, apparently the Greeks, we didn't have one, so this fellow named Nikos Metalinos put together a dance troupe, did auditions, We danced down at St. George Cathedral in the city. That's where we were had rehearsals, and the sole purpose was to put on a dance ensemble for this bicentennial.
So you're telling me you were a part of one of the, if not the first Greek dance troupe here in the Delaware Valley, or one of the earliest for sure.
I'm sure it was, though. I wasn't aware of any other one prior to that.
What was the name of the troupe?
It was called Terpsichoreans, and Terpsichore was one of the muses, the goddess of dance.
And where did you guys practice and put this all together?
We danced at St. George Cathedral in the city. We would have rehearsals 3 nights a week. It was he was a perfectionist. He was very good. Besides dancing, he taught us the meanings of the dance. He taught us songs, and we actually had stage props. We got a reputation after dancing for the bicentennial. We got a reputation, and churches and other organizations would invite us to their festivals and fundraisers. In as much as so, we were actually invited and danced at Carnegie Hall in New York City.
Well, pretty impressive, pretty impressive. So I guess at the Greek Festival at St. Luke's this year, nostalgia takes over, and you get out there with the kids, and you probably have 2 left feet now, but you still give it a shake, right?
The knees aren't what they used to be. Let me just put it that way. But yeah, we like to dance. We like to dance.
So tell us a little bit more about the success of your store. You know, you've got 2 of them, one here in Springfield and one in Upper Darby. How have you been able to maintain in an industry where digital technology and the internet has been so dominant?
First off, we have great support from the Greek community. They've always been very loyal and supportive of us, number one. Number two, I believe we have a great product. One of the things that we enjoy is when people buy flowers, they're unhappy. They're happy because there's a birth in the family. They're happy because there's an anniversary. They're happy because they're in love. They are, it's something that, and they come to us. We actually don't have to go out and solicit it. So it's a great industry to be in. It's a great product to work with. It brings lots of smiles. And we also, the way we stay on top of things, we're very topical, constantly going and changing and evolving. Business, there's an old axiom in business. Either you're going forward or you're going backwards, but you can't stand still. I prefer to go forward.
A final thought or a comment here on the American dream. How was Polites Flowers your family's American dream?
Well, like any American dream, is to own your own business and to be successful at it. And I believe we achieved that, but it's also the legacy. The 3rd generation passed along, and it's just, we've had a tight-knit family. We've always been that way. And I, for instance, have 4 children. They're doing terrific, and it's boomeranging around. My eldest son, who lives in New York City now, is actually going to get his Greek citizenship. Wow. Now, yeah, he's in the final stages.
The human odyssey continues.
The human odyssey, and as a matter of fact, I have still second cousins in Peloponnesus. He's been in touch with them. He talks to them. He visits them. He's going back to Greece with us to do a little ancestry hunting this year.
That's amazing.
So yeah, so it's full circle, full cycle, and he's learning Greek.
Chris Polites, thank you for talking with us. Congratulations and good luck on future endeavors with your store and with preserving part of our American dream and our history.
It's been my pleasure. Thanks for stopping in.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Take care.
For more information about sponsoring or viewing the interview series, visit the Greek-American Heritage Society of Philadelphia online at gahsp.org.